Hey everybody, Rhadamant here. Thanks for tuning in to episode 12 of Kerbal Space Program. So last we left off, we were here. We were making this beautiful little ship. I was just about ready to send this off. Some things I wanted to do is change some of the staging. So the sides come off before anything else. I also wanted to add some beautiful fins to it. And in here as well, making it a little bit more aerodynamic, and that might be about it. This is, as far as I'm concerned, thrust to weight ratio I adjusted. I did that. So now it has, a pretty decent ready to launch thrust to weight ratio, and we'll get this into space. So this is way more complex than it needs to be, but this is a space station to satisfy the mission of docking two vessels on or around Kerbal. Now, it could be on Kerbal, meaning that I could just have two rovers that just connect. That would satisfy the mission as well. The thing is, we haven't done any space stations, so that's why I am doing this now. I'm going to burn off the solid fuel before the liquid. So I'm lowering the liquid's usage, just making sure that I am accelerating. I'm going to start my gravity turn. This is not a particularly stable ship with only one gimbling mainsail. It is probably wants to flip over pretty easily, so I am doing a very, very gentle turn here. And we'll get this up into space, this being far more complex than it needs to be. But for fun, for role-playing. I can afford it. It has wonderful lighting, as you can see. And other benefits as well. It's not going to become an analog to the ISS or anything like that. With only one docking attachment point, it really couldn't be, even if I wanted it to be. We're about to lose the kickback stage, so I got a point prograde here so that we don't have any collisions. And our Apo is almost up into space. Pretty darn close. Alright, so let's point prograde and do the separation so we don't have any collisions. Give it a little bit of oomph. And we are up into space already. Now it's just a mainsail and payload. Once we're actually properly in space, I can deploy the airstream, as aerodynamic forces won't apply in space. The next maneuver we'll want is a circularization, and then I'm going to spend as much fuel as I can to get it a decent altitude. The reason being is, if it's really low, it will be hard to dock with. Or, not hard, but more annoying. It will be cheaper, though. Less fuel, but more annoying. Alright. I'm going to start burning a little bit earlier than I need to. Just because I have so many different stages that this is going to have to go through. And it doesn't hurt to circularize a little early. Doesn't need to be perfect by any means. I just wanted to get that stage over. And now we have our swivel stage. Gonna re-maneuver. So I kind of ignored the last maneuver a little bit. Alright. The maneuver node's really not any different. And I'm gonna have to stage once while circularizing. As you can see, the 3 literally named stages. Let's go ahead and deploy the shell to reveal the inner beauty that is my base, my little space base. I suppose I left some lights up at the top that I didn't mean to, but whatever, they're not hurting. I've been more or less ignoring my maneuver node, but that's okay. We are just here to circularize. So we are now properly circularized. What I'm going to do is my next maneuver is going to be the periaps, and I'm going to raise this to maybe 200. We'll try to get it as nicely circular as possible. All right, and that is the maneuver, so let's go ahead and do that. What is my electric charge? My electric charge is okay for now. Warp to next maneuver. This will cost me very little delta V. For a very short burn. And let's go ahead and ignore the maneuver and just eyeball the Apo up to 200k. Alright. A few hundred meters over isn't going to break the bank, but I'll try to get as close as I can. Just because I've got the fuel, I've got the power. There's no reason not to. Oof. I don't have particularly... Which tanks are going to fill up? Okay, so I'm going to temporarily shut down some engines just so that I have less thrust and therefore can control this a little bit better. You know what? All right, so the next maneuver here is the circularization one. And that's the maneuver right there. About 200 on either. 199, 202. That's good enough. Do we have enough? Yeah, I think we have enough delta V for this burn too, just on these two engines. And I knocked it back down to 2 engines so I could do fine-tuned changes. It always helps when you're trying to have a very accurate orbit to have engines with not a lot of thrust. Because with too much thrust, even 1% of a lot of thrust is still a lot, right? It still makes major changes. I could have included some additional components on this ship to allow for fine-tuned thrusting, but I didn't. It's actually not that important that it's perfectly circularized. It's just a personal challenge. All right, Mr. Apo. Yep, that's more or less circle right there. We'll burn there, and then any excess parts and fuel, honestly, we can just jettison. As this thing, once it is in a stable orbit that we like, we don't need anything else to... We don't need to move it for any other reason. There's no orbital decay or anything like that in this game. Oh! Hit the wrong key. Boy, could that not be more obvious. Alright, let's retrograde burn and fix that. I was trying to feather it, and I hit full thrust. Okay. I'm going to bring this down to... Good. And right at the Apo, we will circularize this as perfectly as I'm able. Alright. Teeny micro adjustments now. Okay, good enough. And there's our orbit. Looks quite nice. And the next thing we do, we have a lot of empty tanks here. We took more fuel up than we needed. Let's go ahead and stage it all away. Look at it tumble. And then what we're left with is a survey scanner and a antenna, and a infrared telescope. There's a lot of solar power panels that need deployment. I don't have these on action groups, which means they are not hotkeyed, so I'm just going to have to click them myself. The risk of having unmanned is if you run out of power, you lose your ability to control the vessel. So I need to make sure that I am obviously generating more charge than I'm using. It's -8. Anything negative means it's going up. I did leave 2 lights on here that I didn't mean to, so I'm going to shut those off. These lights here, as you can see, cast a beautiful rainbow, an RGB rainbow. It would look nicer, of course, at night, but these lights here are going to stay on. My RGB lights are going to stay on at all times. They're pretty low wattage. Then, of course, we have docking lights here at the back that we can turn on when someone's trying to dock with the port there. So what these do here is... the survey scanner is only for polar orbits. This was mostly for design. What this allows you to do is when you're making a space base or a mun base or something like that, it allows you to scan for resources so that you can see sort of the best place to land for ore and whatnot. And then, of course, there is the infrared telescope, which is, as you can see, telling it needs a solar orbit, meaning it needs to orbit the sun and not the Kerbal. All of this, of course, was for design purposes, to look cool, not to function well. If we wanted to, we could transmit science from my little space center back to Kerbal. We have a mobile processing lab and everything. Once again, also cosmetic in nature. I guess I need to, at this point, extend the rear solar power panels. Probably more power than we will ever need, given that this is mostly a cosmetic base and not a functional one. But I'm going to accelerate time to a Kerbal night, or rather be on the far side of the planet so it's darker, just to see the beautiful glory that is this little base here. Alright, so this is what it looks like all lit up. It still has some incorrect lighting. Alright, that's good to know that I made it improper. And here we go. Here's our beautiful little base. Space station. It has a lot of inline reaction wheels, so it is very, very controllable. As you can see, I can spin it on a dime. And then even... what is it saying? Scientific data from around space around Kerbal was a mission that I had, so I just completed that with this Science Junior. If I ever get a mission to get science around Kerbal, I can do it now for free because I have this base up here. So if we're looking at the batteries, it's only draining at 0.2, so there's really no way we're ever going to run out of charge. All right, that's enough about that. Let's go back to the Space Center. And now we just need a teeny little vessel to dock with it. It doesn't need to do very much. So let's see if there's any missions that go hand in hand with it. So I have a mission to plant a flag on Mid-Miss and an orbital station around the Mun. No, there's really no other missions being offered that truly go well with what I currently have to do, which is unfortunate, but that sometimes happens. We did get just enough science to unlock something here. So we're going to unlock precision engineering. Just, yeah, why not? All right, so the next step is to create a docking ship with this. So we'll call this RHD 11.5. Save it. Everything here is going to get thrown out. And then I'm going to have a... which one's better? This one. Okay, I'm going to have my highest tech probe core. Hang on, what does this do? Stability and prograde hold. Stability. Okay, so this is my highest tech probe core. It does the most for me. And this is going to be a really, really, really simple craft. It's going to basically just be a docking component. So we're going to put that in a utility bay. And then we're going to spend... We're going to make this one efficient. So we're going to have the clampetron. Oops. That's going to be annoying. Let's redo this. So the first object I'm going to put down is the service bay. And that will be easier to click on. Then the probe core. Then the docking. Make sure it locks to the top. Good. Then we're going to, this will be the first time I make use of this, we're going to want some RCS fuel. Whoa, that's way too much. That's still too much. Oops. It is much easier to dock with RCS fuel than with not. In my very humble opinion, through experience, I can just say that RCS is probably the way to go. It just makes it a lot easier. Additionally, let's go ahead and slap 2 low power lights on so they cast their own light for when we're docking. If I could rotate, there we go. I'm not going to worry about aerodynamics. This is, I'll probably not bring this down, but I could always bring this down and, you know, smash. So for RCS fuel, it helps to have, how to explain this? The most, the parts of your ship that are the furthest from your craft, I'm just going to have to build it and explain it as I finish it. Because I'm realizing that my tech vocabulary for this is limited. Alright, so we're adding power. And then this thing will dock. What I'm going to want behind it is maybe just a little bit of fuel like this, and then some efficient engine. I don't think I unlocked the nuclear engines, so we'll use the Terrier. Something just a little bit of thrust, and this gives this a low thrust to weight, which is fine. I'm not looking for a high thrust to weight anyway. And put RCS throughout the bottom, or RCS thrusters rather. So this is what's going to actually connect with the space station. These might cast weird shadows. Let's kind of put them. There we go. I'll have 4, just for the symmetry's sake. Pull these batteries down a little bit. So this is what connects. And then we need to get it to space and circularize it. So a little decoupler here and a fuel adapter, a larger tank of fuel, and what is my thrust to weight with the skiff? Maybe something that packs a little bit more punch than the skiff. So 300, 400. The skipper is 650. That's probably enough thrust. Yep, that will be enough thrust for me. And then outside of that, we're going to have back to the old solid fuel booster. It's cheap and it works. And this thing has like way too much delta V. Actually, that's enough delta V. Just 4 of them. This is still overkill, but but the cost of this craft is really not that much. Okay. Slap these together. Glorious. And overwrite. One last thing, because we're on solid fuel, it would not hurt me to add in some really basic photovoltaic panels. These, of course, are worth very, very, very little money, but that's just so that I can't possibly run out of power. All right, and then let's check out the thrust to weight ratio. It's a bit higher than I need, so I'm going to drop this down to 80. 80 works, and launch. So a lower orbit will move faster in relation to the space station. Higher orbit will move slower. So if I put this into a very, very low orbit, I can more easily dock with this craft. So what I want to do is I want to wait to launch until it will be a little bit ahead of me, and then I can catch up. I know, strange, yes, but all right. So that will be ahead of me, and let's go ahead and launch. Launch my little connection here. Now, I would say that docking is one of the hardest control-wise to get right. I find it particularly challenging to dock correctly, especially if you have a craft that is weighty or bulky or doesn't have a lot of control points, like inline reaction and that kind of stuff. It can actually be pretty tricky to properly get some two vessels to dock. So you want to have things like reaction wheels and RCS thruster blocks with fuel, stuff like that, just to make it a little bit easier. Because otherwise, you're really gonna it can be quite challenging. All right, I was tilting off course, and what I did was I activated my liquid engine, even if it's a little early to do so, because I didn't want to flip-flop, and I didn't have any winglets or anything like that on here. So now I'm going to cut the engines for a second. Phase. And we have a very ballistic arc here, because I hadn't been able to tilt very much due to the nature that the solid fuel is much harder to control. It's cheaper, but much harder to control. Alright, so we're in space now. I'm going to see how costly or how much I'm going to need to prepare ahead of time to circularize, because I don't have a crazy high thrust to weight ratio here. So it's a burn time of about almost 2 full minutes. Which means I'm going to start burning a little early. I'm going to start burning around now, just to make sure it circularizes all nice. And as you can see, I timed it so that the RHD-11 will be ahead of me. You want to launch so that they are sort of close to one another, and it depends on what you want to do. If you wanted it to be behind you, you'd want a higher orbit. If you want it ahead of you, you want a lower orbit. The lower the orbit, the more quickly it will move. So while this moves slower, its velocity is going to be 2,100 meters. At my lower orbit, my velocity will be a little higher in relation. We'll be spinning around. The orbital period will be quicker. And this makes sense. Like, to extrapolate it, it takes far less time for Mercury to orbit the sun than it does Pluto. Pluto orbits the sun. Or I should say Neptune or something like that, because Pluto is a planetoid, not so much a planet. But my point stands is the closer you are to the gravity well, the faster you'll orbit. So if you want to see what I'm talking about and you speed up time, Mun makes one full rotation in a lot less time than it takes Min-Miss, for instance. So what I'm saying is, now that this RHD-11 is ahead of me, orbit-wise, I can catch up to it and dock with it more easily. All right, so there's my periaps and apoaps. My periaps, of course, dips me back into space. We want to select this as a target and do a transfer burn when we can rendezvous. So something... Oh. When should I transfer? Oh, the beautiful thing about maneuvers. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is circularize a little bit better at the next apoaps so I don't re-enter, because this craft is not made for re-entry. And I'll fix my low orbit. Okay. So that's my next maneuver that I've set out. And let's warp to it in just a second as soon as I'm aligned with the maneuver. I think I didn't give it enough of a lead. So as you can see, I'm in front of it. If I wanted to slow down, I actually have enough fuel to slow down. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. I will slow my orbit time so that it can catch up to me. So what... This takes extra fuel and is, you know, in my opinion, sloppy. But what this will allow is... Let me do another maneuver. Is because we have a higher orbit, we'll be moving slower in relation, and the RHD-11 can catch up to us. Because I didn't time it quite right. I didn't give it enough of a lead. Alright, warp to next maneuver. So if you could see here, I'm moving faster than RHD-11. RHD-11's moving at a pretty constant 2100 meters per second. Whereas, because I don't have a cylindrical or a circular orbit, my orbital speed varies a bit more. Alright, so now as you can see, I'm moving at 25, and there's a 50 meter per second difference here, which means given enough time, as you can see with the time warp, it will catch up to me. And given that it catches up to me, what I can do is I can then time a rendezvous where we will dock with one another. And I can just drag this maneuver until the rendezvous looks good to me. So the rendezvous is going to be... Actually, I can start rendezvousing now. That's not perfect. Let's advance time a little bit more. Give it a real lead. And what you're looking for is the separation between the two crafts to be at a minimum. Right now, the separation is massive because of my orbital periods. I just didn't, like I said, didn't time this very well. But it doesn't mean that it can't be corrected. It's actually pretty, honestly, easy to correct. We just have to be a little patient. I need to wait for the right orbital time. Hold on, let me edit that. Fine. Wasn't letting me edit that. Nope, still wrong. I think it's just getting more wrong as I wait. Alright. So what I'll do is I'll really circularize so that we have a more stable orbit, and that way I can advance time to the point where we can rendezvous a little bit more easily. And that's my fault. All right, let's get nice and aligned. So the beauty of the RCS, if I hit R right now, I can fire off the RCS. It uses a little bit of the monoprop fuel. the monopropellant, and it will help to align us because right now, because we have this big circularization phase engine on it, the craft here is a little unwieldy. So RCS fuel is useful for that. Yeah, we're gonna need to accelerate time a bunch so that we are better timed for a... Oh, there we go. This will be better timed for a rendezvous. So now it's catching up to us. Yeah, here we go. As you can see, the separation here is... We're going to be separated by 4 kilometers. And I can tweak this a little bit. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it's close. Yeah, 4-ish kilometers is pretty good. Really, I would say anything under 5 kilometers or even 10 is pretty workable. And I'm really only making it worse. There we go. All right, we'll work with a 4.4. That's totally fine. Let's warp to next maneuver. And then what you do is you have this burn, and then you kind of... what I will do is actually set it as a target and match its speed more or less, and then ditch my big engine phase. Because the big engine phase won't be able to do the fine-tuned adjustments for orbit. This big engine has too much thrust. So even if I did a thrust limiter, you know, it's more fuel, it's more bang for my buck than I need. All right, so we'll have a separation of 4.7. That's fine. Let's warp to here. And as you can see, the layout is I'm leading it a little bit. So I should have blasted it. I should have launched a little sooner. I let it get ahead of me too quick. All right. Now, the speed difference between me and the target is 100 meters per second. And for me to dock, obviously, I'm going to need to lower this speed differential. Or speed difference, I should say. So what I'm doing is somewhat of a off-centered retrograde burn. What I would like to do is get my retrograde marker over the target. Like this. So if I launch this way, it pushes the marker down towards the pink target. I know this is like Zug caveman speak. But what this is doing is it's burning off all of the difference between the two objects so that right now the separation here is 1 kilometer. And the more, at this point, this big engine is too unwieldy for me to really make finer tuned adjustments. So I'm just going to get rid of it as it's too clunky to do the fine-tuned stuff. And as I center more carefully with my teeny little gimbling Terrier engine, as you can see, my separation is now going to be... Apparently it's greater. Alright. What I could do to fix that is... Yeah, let's recenter it a bit. Okay, and we'll speed up time. Actually, to make this faster, what I can do is just blast towards it. I'll move towards it at about 10 meters per second. 9.8, that seems fitting. So now I'll accelerate time a little bit while we drift towards it. I'm going to stop time briefly just to recenter, making sure we're on target. It's like if you could adjust an arrow while in flight. We're moving a little bit quicker towards it, but more accurately towards it. So our separation here is 0. It's like literally I will smack into it unless I cut my my speed difference. So if let's find it. It's where is... Oh, there it is. So our distance between us is only a few hundred meters. And much like landing, I need to do somewhat of a suicide burn now. Not true suicide burn, but I don't want to smack into a space station at 9 meters per second. That would be violent and destructive. Even hitting it, most parts have a tolerance of about 9 meters per second. That's like the magic number. That's like kind of what gravity is, 9 meters per second squared. It's like a 1 second free fall is the collision tolerance. But even at 1 meter per second, I could easily break off solar power panels and the like. So at this point, I'm not going to worry too much about orbital ball, cue ball, any of that stuff. What I'm going to do is right-click my clampatron and control from here, which puts the needle in the middle, like the new middle of the needle is the clampatron. And then I'm going to set my target as their clampatron, because at this point, I'm not actually interested in the crafts, the ship's differences. I'm interested in the clampatron. So the way I like to do this, you can use RCS fuel with this, but I like to just very roughly align crafts so that they're within the same plane of one another, so that you can even attempt to dock, because I need to jet backwards before I hit these very delicate solar power panels. Oh, I'm bumping the panels a little bit. Then you can go to docking mode, and there is a control mode here for linear changes and rotational changes. But before I go into the docking mode, I am going to... Whoa! My RCS is on, and it is real powerful. I'm going to line these two up so that they can connect. Like that. And then go back into docking mode. So as you can see, these two things, they aren't perfectly parallel. I could aim down a little bit and over. Back into the docking mode. Now, it's a matter of trying to figure out which way is up, which way is down, and the extra keys that are involved. And what I'm trying to do is line up my... Oop, I bumped it. Oh, I got close enough that I'm just gonna cut my RCS, and we've docked. What I was trying to do is line up my thrust and my rotation, so that if you can imagine holding an arrow and trying to get a bullseye, if you angle the arrow up or down, you can push an arrow into the bullseye, but if it's not straight on, it won't connect. So now our two wonderful crafts are one. And as you can see here, I can rotate them as one. The larger the craft is, the more sensitive the clampatron's going to be. So it's not waddle-proof. You shouldn't waddle it around. It's somewhat delicate, right? There is no reason that I need to disconnect this part from the station. I can just leave it like this. That's totally fine. And that actually solves that contract. Cool. Very nice. And now our station actually has RCS. So I can make adjustments to the station with the RCS thrusters. So if I wanted to go left or right or rotate, stuff like that, we can use the RCS thrusters. Well, there you go. And as far as orbits go, docking really didn't change your orbit at all. So back to the Space Center, and we'll figure out what we got to do next, now that I'm done with this mission. So if I go into the contracts here, Minmus and orbital station around the Mun is what I've got. But Explore Minmus is my next big contract here, is my next milestone. So I'm going to accept that. Plant flag on the Mun, sure. Science from surface of Mun, sure. And then I have a position satellite in equatorial orbit of Minmus, sure. And I'm just kind of working all these things together. So my next mission can be to set up another maybe a microstation around Minmus, around the orbit of Minmus, that satisfies my equatorial satellite, and then I can dock with it, which satisfies the explored Minmus, and then that docking craft can then separate, plant a flag on Minmus, and come home. And that will be for next episode. So, again, thank you all very much for watching. Thanks for all your wonderful feedback. I hope you have learned something here. I hope that you, that if you want to dock two vessels, docking requires, in my opinion, a lot of practice. I think there's a scenario tutorial that Squad had put in that allows you to practice that, because it is probably one of the harder things to do in the game, in my opinion. Thank you all for watching. I hope you tune in next time. Adios.